the 12th of our Chassidus and music series. I'm very excited about tonight's sources. It's always a kind of an adventure. I've taken this on, obviously, 12 weeks ago. But it's something, an idea that's been ruminating for a lot longer, to try to gather these sources. And the best way to gather them and to learn them is to share them, that I found. So really, it kind of feels like getting deeper into the heart of the matter. And we did 8 weeks of a mimer, of a Hasidic discourse that delved into the nature of music. This is a Hasidic discourse in the early 1800s that delved into the nature of how musically successful approach is to just get out of the way of the music. And recently we've been bringing sources also from older times, I mean from the early 1800s, but obviously sources from much older than that, going back, of course, to the time of the Chumash, Torah, and since then through the years of oral Torah. It all kind of gathers in Hasidic teachings, which gathers many different teachings together to give us an insight and be able to practically apply the wisdom of Torah to our lives and to our practice as musicians. And recently we've been doing teachings by the Lubavitcher Rebbe that were spoken and then put in printed form in 1991 and 92. And these are very, very special, besides the fact that they collect sources from the thousands of years of Torah scholarship and of the revealed Torah, Jewish law, the Jewish stories, and also mystical Torah, Kabbalah, and the essence of Hasidic teachings, again, which is to take all these elements and kind of find the essence of it and apply it. And so we were just recently talking about the power of music to change the world, to transform the world, and the power of music also to express miracles, and the Rebbe's actual encouragement to use music to express miracles, to express the thanks for miracles, even the ones that haven't happened yet. And that this is part of a personal redemption and part of a global redemption. And now there's a source from 1992. It's incredible, and it really gets down to the essence of what this place is about, Sound Heights, which, as anyone knows a little bit about my history, the two things in my history that kind of combine in this place are Torah learning and teaching. I ran a Chabad house for 5 years in Woodstock, New York, and music, which is something that I've played and studied and worked on and been involved in all my life. And most recently started Sound Heights Records as a recording studio, as a play. I kind of originally had this idea of something a little more than a recording studio, how let's say a really good record producer could help an artist bring out the essence of their talent and who they are. And I've experienced really good producers in my time in really great studios. I've also experienced some not great producers. And when I say not great producers, I'm not even talking about their talent or their ears. I'm actually talking about their inability to find the best in the artists. And sometimes in certain studio environments, there can be a kind of an ego battle, put downs. There's the classic, behind the glass of the recording studio, where the sound doesn't transfer. So you have people in the recording room, and you have people in the mixing room, and some of the know-it-all producers, would be this two-faced thing where they, to the guys in the recording room, oh yeah, great, sounds great, guys, and then turn off the microphone so they can't hear anything, and then privately to the guys in the mixing room say, oh, these guys are awful. That kind of thing, that kind of energy, which is not unheard of. This in the general music business, it's something I experienced and I saw firsthand in a couple of top studios, and it was something that I realized was more than just a commodity for good business practice to have a studio environment where people can feel comfortable to express themselves and be themselves. But even more than that, there's a spiritual dimension to this. There's an idea of a real belief that everybody has a potential and everyone has an important voice. Then it doesn't matter the skill level or even the taste. Finding a certain kind of way to find the delight in any kind of musical expression, whether it's a young baby banging on a piano, or an older musician who's just learning guitar and trying to find their voice, or a professional who's working on all cylinders, or a professional who's maybe struggling with some personal issues, maybe some ego issues, or a producer for that matter that we were just talking about. So really this idea of bringing out the best in ourselves, as music as a path to inspire us to live better as people, to form better relationships. And I kind of intuited that even when I opened up this place just as a recording studio. And as I kind of soul searched and developed along with my wife, Samira, and many friends and many musicians along the way, mentors, it became clear that combining the two things as a rabbi, running a Chabad house, teaching Torah, teaching wisdom teachings, that teach us how to live a harmonious life. And as a musician, as a creative person that can really cut to the heart of things, and when you're getting down to your own inner music, there's a transformation that happens. It transforms one's entire life, one's entire home, when you fill your home with music that comes from the heart, and certainly beyond that, as we well know. And so this talk from the Lubavitch Rebbe, which was said in winter of 1992, the Rebbe not only emphasizes this aspect of music as transformation, it talks specifically as it applies to women, which applies to everyone really, because the Rebbe also talks about this idea that the Jewish people are called woman. The whole Jewish people is compared to, let's say, a God or Hashem is our husband, and we are his bride. And that's something that's commonly spoken about in mystical teachings, as well as, of course, what the King Solomon's Song of Songs, the very foundation of music in the Torah, or one of the pinnacle aspects of music in the Torah, Song of Songs, talks about quite explicitly the relationship between man and a woman, a husband and wife, a romantic relationship, which is, according to the great commentaries, is an analogy for the relationship between Hashem, our creator, and ourselves and as the Jewish people, and ultimately as a people of the world. So, but at the same time, obviously, we speak specifically to women and their role. But the Rebbe gives a very, very specific teaching, and I'll just name it in the beginning, but we're going to get into it in specific, and in the Rebbe's words, because it's very, very powerful, how it's important to bring the redemption. It's important for women to make music with a deep joy. And where does the deep joy come from, and why particularly with women? It's because the deep joy is an outgrowth and a transformation of a very deep pain. And the Rebbe points out that women in particular, and I think this also can apply to men, of course, which is a certain feminine nature of being more sensitive, more emotionally sensitive to the pains, the sufferings of life, the sufferings of exile, and the yearning for redemption can be very, very powerful, very overwhelming for anybody. And men can also face this, and can also face issues with powerful and difficult emotions and struggles in one's life, and difficulty, getting overwhelmed and having many kinds of struggles, internal and external. That's just, life can be tough. And the more sensitive we are, and the more we suffer because of the brokenness of the world, and the brokenness of our lives, the brokenness of who we are, and having the faith that there's going to be a repairing, that there is repairing, that there is transformation. That transformation, the deeper the suffering, the deeper the joy. And the Rebbe relates it to Miriam. Miriam, who's Moshe's sister, as we're going to get into, and we'll get inside the sources we can find. You go to soundheightsrecords.com, go to the classes section, or go to the events section, and in the PDF sources, class number 12, I have a source which is a direct PDF of a section of the Rebbe's teaching in the original printing, the way it was printed in Sefer HaSichos, the book of talks of the Balatz Rebbe this is from 1992. So here we are on page 103 on the first page, right at the top in the right column. So we say in Parshas B'Shalach. So in the Parsha of B'Shalach, which is known as the Parsha, the portion of the Torah which has the song of the sea. The Super Odis Shira Sayam. We speak about the song of the sea, and so here's the quote: "Az Yashir Moshe v'nei Yisrael v'Gomer," etc. So then Moshe and the children of Israel, meaning Moshe and the men sang. But after this, the verse says that after a whole song that Moshe sang with the children of Israel, the Tikach Miriam Hanaviyah, that the Miriam, the prophetess, she took. What did she take? First it says who she was. Achas Aaron. She was the sister of Aaron, which is important. Why it says that she was the sister of Aaron, even though she was also the sister of Moshe. So what did she take? She took Esa Taif Biyada. She took a drum in her hand. V'teitzan kol hanashim. And all the women went out after her, v'taifim with their drums, of mecholos, and with mecholos. So mecholos is an interesting word. Mecholos could be translated as another kind of drum, a timbrel. Machol is a circle, so it could be another kind of drum, which is many translate this as tambourines, which is the tradition that Miriam and the women were playing tambourines. But we already say tofim. Tofim are a certain kind of drums. It could be like tambourines. Machalos can be other different instruments as well. But machal, also relating to a circle, also relates to dance. So they came out with their drums and their dancing. It was a dancing, rhythmic music. They had instruments. The men didn't have instruments. The women had instruments. V'tan lahem Miriam shir l'Hashem v'gomer. And they repeated the song that Moshe had sung with the men, with the women. Shebezeh mudgeshes malos nashim al nashim. This emphasizes the unique quality of women over men. Shashir shalahem ma'aseh metoich simcha yisera, that their joy was greater. B'toifim mecholos, because they had instruments, they had drums. The men didn't have drums. The men didn't have other instruments. The men had their voices, but the women had their voices and they had instruments, and that's an additional joy. To such a degree, so it was. They were sure. These women of that generation, these righteous women, that they knew that Hashem would make for them miracles. And therefore they brought drums with them from Egypt. They came out of Egypt. They were sure everything was going to work out. The men were not so sure. The men had their doubts when they were stuck between the sea and the Egyptian army that was coming to attack them. And at any point, it says that the Jews had to be schlepped out. They didn't go willingly, even though redemption was here. It was time to go, but they didn't go willingly. But we see it's different by the women. Not only did the women go willingly, the women came prepared. They came prepared with musical instruments. The Bir Tamadavar, so to explain this, the reason for this, Shashir Miriam, that the song of the women, particularly led by Miriam, so why was a much greater joy. Yesh Lemar, we can say, Isa b'Medrash. So there's a teaching in the Medrash, in the oral stories, the oral teachings of the Torah, on these verses. It says, Miriam al Shem HaMirer. Why is Miriam called Miriam? Called Miriam because the word Miriam, Mar, the root of the word Miriam, Mar, means bitterness. It's because she was embittered, because she's connected with bitterness. Because the main difficulty of our enslavement in Egypt was the bitterness. They made our lives bitter. right? The word actually used, v'yamaru, that the Egyptians made the Jewish people's lives bitter. The very hard work, difficult work. And difficult work, as the commentaries explain, is not just backbreaking labor. That's one type of difficult work. There's another type of difficult work, which I think many people can relate to, is they were given jobs that were not suited to them. And the way it explains it, that the men were given jobs that were normally done by women, and the women were given jobs that were normally done by men. And it was a very, very difficult type of slave labor. To do. They feel forced, they feel pressured to be doing forced by an exile state of mind to a redemption state of mind, that more and more we're doing what is suited to our own soul. And so for a musical person, which is most of us, if not all of us to some degree, but certainly those who are musically inclined, that to escape the perich, the hard, backbreaking, soul-crushing labor of more of that which is suited to our soul, and less of that which is just brings us down. And that takes shifting our lives in many ways. So that was what the Jewish people were experiencing, how Miriam really epitomized that, and her experience was really an experience of that. So, Miriam. So when Miriam was born, the Meshech Pevav Shana, in the course of 86 years, that. So Arba Shanim Lifnei Lidas Moshe. She was born 86 years after the beginning of the exile, which was 4 years before Moshe was born. And it was after this and through this that Hashem established a Redeemer, and this is Miriam. So we normally think of Moshe as the Redeemer, but here the Medrash says that Miriam was the Redeemer. Miriam is in some ways more connected to the redemption than Moshe. And as we see, so you could say that the explanation of the words of the Medrash, what is Goyel Miriam? What did it mean that the Redeemer is Miriam? Al Shema Miriam, because of the bitterness. Because seemingly bitterness and redemption are two opposite things. So why do we say redemption is Miriam? Is the person named after bitterness? Miriam hargisha the kaiva beyosa es miras agalas, that she felt it much more deeply than others. She felt the bitterness of the exile, and so the geula came through the one who could feel, who was most sensitive to it, who suffered the most of the pains of exile.
So Miriam she was the daughter of.
She was Moshe's sister, daughter of Yocheved, yeah.
And Aaron.
Right, and the sister of Aaron, right, is going to be important, right? But we said that she was, so her great joy in the song, her song was greater than the song of the men, because she came with instruments. And that's because she had a much deeper sensitivity, negative reaction to exile. It was much more bitter for her. And so the sages explain, so why does it say that when Miriam comes she took her instrument and started singing? Why does it describe her as a sister of Aaron and not the sister of Moshe? So Achos Aaron v'lo Achos Moshe, so that the sages say, they point this out. So very interesting, the verse says that she's the sister of Aaron. Doesn't mention she's the sister of Moshe, which is seemingly more important. I mean, Moshe is the one who just led the men's song, and she's leading the women's song. So why does it say she's the sister of Aaron? Because this is referring to a prophecy that she gave over when she was 4 years old, when she was only this, before Moshe was born, when she was only the sister of Aaron. She didn't have a brother named Moshe yet. Moshe hadn't been born yet. She'ashias Yisrael. This was her prophecy. She said, in the future, my mother will give birth to the Savior of the Jewish people. The Kavan, Sheshluchu Liyar. So she prophesied about Moshe. Moshe was born. When she saw him being thrown in the river, so obviously he was put in a basket, unlike the other Jewish babies who were thrown there to die. But she Amad Aviyavatavch al Rosha. So her father said to her, Amrullah, Biti Hecha Nevuascha. She tapped her head. And he said, what's happened to your prophecy? Right? He just got tossed in the river. He's just being sent away to his death. Who knows? A baby floating in the river, even in a basket, is likely to pass away. So it says that Miriam stood from afar to watch what's going to happen with the baby in the basket in order to know Ma Yasalo, what's going to happen to him. So she wants to know what's going to be the end of her prophecy. Because her prophecy was about redemption. Yoshias Yisrael. She prophesied about a savior of the Jewish people. So therefore she yearned with the expiration of the eyes, with this powerful yearning. What's going to happen with her prophecy? And she stood from afar. What's going to happen? And as the exile continued, she became more and more bitter. To such a degree that the bitterness of exile is emphasized by her name, Miriam meaning bitterness. And so through the bitterness on the exile. So Miriam, Shem HaMirror, that she is named after bitterness. Because she was looking forward to the redemption. She was yearning for redemption. Because of her yearning, the Jewish people merited redemption. Then it was fulfilled, her prophecy. So we're going to skip the brackets here. Around page 304, second page. Lafi erech goydel meridus al galus. So because of the great bitterness of exile, there was a great joy, an extreme joy on the redemption. And there's a saying from the sayings of our fathers, Pirkei Avos, Lefum Tzara Agra. According to the pain is the reward. I titled this class, the deeper the pain, the deeper the joy. V'tikach Miriam as toif biyada. So Miriam took the drum. That this greater joy of their song, having an additional aspect of musical instruments, was because of her deep pain. So even we could also say that there's something, we could sweeten it to say that it's mentioned, her prophecy concerning her song on the sea. It says, V'tikach Miriam Hanavia Achos Aaron. So now we're going to get to why it mentions that she's the sister of Aaron. It says she took, as Taif Biyada, she took the drum in her hand, V'teitzan Kol Nashim Achara, but Taifim Mecholis, and all the women came after her with their drums and with their timbrels or their dances. Ki Keshiyar Yisrael Es Mitzrayim Meis Al Svasim, because when the Jewish people saw the Egyptians who were dead on the edge of the sea, that's the point when they were no longer afraid of the Egyptians. Meaning the whole time, through all the miracles with the pillar of fire, and even with the splitting of the sea and watching them drown, and everything else, all the 10 plagues, even more, they didn't believe. They were still afraid of the Egyptians until they saw them dead on the side of the sea. And that's V'nis Kaimen Nevuasa Shel Miriam Al Gula Yisrael. So that's when she started to sing B'Shleimus. That's when the redemption became complete in everybody's hearts and minds. No more fear. But Mela Haisa Gam Hasimcha Al Gula B'Shleimus K'Teifim B'Teifim. That's why the instruments could be taken out, because the redemption was complete. So now section Hey. So Milas and Nashim Bashiris Miriam. So the specialty of women in singing the song of Miriam, Mudgeshes Od Yosef Haftarah, is expressed even more in the Haftarah, the additional reading from the prophets that's connected to the Parsha.
Which
The Tasher Devorah. It's the song of Devorah. This is Parshas Bashalach we're talking about. So the song of Devorah. It's very interesting. So Aval Pisha Parsha Atzma Kurim Shiras Hanashim. So even though in the Parsha it talks about the men's song, Moshe and the Jewish men, V'gam Shiras Hanashim, it also talks about Miriam and the women's song. Makom Makom Lo Maftirim B'Shiras Hanashim, but it doesn't. The Haftarah is not with a man's song, and there are plenty of men's songs to use. Okay, in fact, when the Song of the Sea is recited in shul, in synagogue, on the 7th day of Pesach, we recite the Song of the Sea. Then we make a Haftarah then. What's the Haftarah? It's the Song of David.
It's Az Yashim Moshe, huh?
Right, we say Az Yashim Moshe, we say right the Shiras David, right? Ella B'Shiras Nashim. So, but when the actual Torah is being read in the synagogue, when the verses from the Torah come up in that week's Torah portion, Bashalach, we say the song of a woman, Shiras Devorah, the song of Devorah. So what's among the many reasons for this? Miriam, since the advantage of the women's song is greater, the specialty of the women's song is greater than that of the men, because it had instruments. So it's known that the Haftarah is connected with itself, is connected with exile. So so emphasizing the women in the Haftarah, the Devorah song, that the main emphasis of the Haftarah is talking about the time of exile. This is the specialty of Jewish women, righteous Jewish women. Al derech, so page 305, bedugmas Devorah, similar to Devorah, Bizman Hagalas. In the time of exile, that it's in their merit, in the merit of the righteous women, that we go from exile into redemption. So earlier in the Sikha, the Rebbe talked about that there's a teaching from the sages that the redemption of any generation is in the merit of the righteous women of that generation. And in particular, the merit of the exile, the redemption of Egypt, was in the merit of the righteous women of that generation. And the Arizal teaches that the women of this generation that we are now, the generation of Mashiach, as the Rebbe points out, the women alive now are reincarnations of the women who came out of Egypt. And so they have a particular special connection to music. So now we're on page 305, section Vav, section 6. So even to go into more detail, in the beginning, so I'm not going to. There's a lot more to be said about this, and because we have limited time, I'm going to say a little bit of it outside. I'm not, and then we'll get to the end. I'll say it word for word because it's important. The actual practical teaching of the Rebbe, which particularly applies to women, but it certainly applies to all of us as well. We'll say it inside the Rebbe's words. But now we say like this: that Devorah was special. What made Devorah special? She was a prophetess. And her husband's name was Lepidus, says it. And so what's the significance of the fact that she was married to a man named Lepidus?
But Devorah was the daughter of who?
I'm not sure who the parents. That's number one. Number two, and this is important, that Devorah, there's a concept that Devorah sat under a date palm tree, a toimer. So Toimer Devorah, a famous Kabbalistic sefer called Toimer Devorah, right? The date palm of Devorah. That Devorah was the leader of that generation, right? Very unique situation where you had a woman who was the the sages ask why is she under a day prom? It's because of yichud, because of the halachic concern, the concern in Jewish law of a man and woman who are not man and wife to be alone together in a compromising situation, meaning it's a breach of sanctity to have that kind of mixture in the improper context for men and women to be alone together, and there's improper context. So here is Devorah, who was a woman as a leader. She had to deal with many people, men, women, many different, every level of the Jewish people as a teacher and a prophet. So she was under a date palm tree, so she wouldn't be in that compromising situation with a man. So what does this emphasize with Devorah? The mila of tznius. Now tznius is a word that sometimes gets especially in the, I have a daughter in high school here in Crown Heights, and tznius is a buzzword. Don't tell me about tznius. They're always giving lectures on tznius. And tznius is often interpreted, sometimes even by the teachers, but certainly the way the girls hear it often is the length of the skirt, you have to dress like this, you have to wear like this. But that's not the essence of what tznius is. And ultimately, tznius, it really applies to men as much as women. Tznius has to do with a certain humility, a certain concealing one's specialness.
That's fair.
Right, in order to protect it. I mean, this is about protection. It's about the power of, there's a pasuk that says in Tehillim, Kol kavuda bas melech penima, the honor of the king's daughter is within. That as we know, especially as artists, that there's a sensitivity to something, sometimes certain very personal emotions. It's also considered, sometimes people they have an idea, they have a creative idea, and they want to share it with everybody, right? And so we say that's not tznius, not because they did something wrong, but because they're actually compromising their idea by not protecting it. So the idea of a person's tznius is this idea of humility, of guarding our special qualities. Now, in some ways tznius is the opposite of arrogance, right? And protecting it also involves having a sanctity among men and women.
Modest.
So it's often translated as modesty, but again, modesty is obviously the opposite of arrogance, but it's often interpreted as something to do with how a person would dress. But it really has much more to do with a person's sense of protecting the sanctity. So protecting the sanctity of relations with men and women, protecting the sanctity of our ideas, the sanctity of our creativity. A person who has there's sometimes a trend for people to overshare, over self-express as if this is something that's automatically healing, and why it can be very healing for someone to share their deep, most painful stories. But sometimes events or gatherings are set up, or certain circumstances or people are encouraged to share very personal, deep things in an unsafe context, and it's often to the person's detriment, not benefit. But in a safe space, it can be very healthy to share and to unburden oneself. But if it's not a safe space, that's why tznius is very important, to protect our vulnerable selves. So that's a unique thing by divorce, a unique thing by women, by righteous Jewish women.
By married.
Right, of course, by marriage. So let's continue to the next page 306. This idea that it says that by Devorah, after there was this miracle. Devorah sang a song that was after a miracle of a war where they had conquered a wicked non-Jewish army that was persecuting the Jewish people, and the Jews won the war under the leadership of Devorah and Barak, who was the general. And it was after this that she sang the song. Barak also participated in the song. And it says that after that, V'tishkat ha'aretz, the earth was calm, was peaceful. For how long? For 40 years. Right, 40 is a unique number, a significant number, as we learned last week. We talked about the pasuk, Lamarbe hamisre, right, to increase in authority, right? Mashiach will come and increase in authority, and there was a special closed mem. Mem, the letter mem, has a numerical value of 40, right? Lo shalom en kates, an infinite peace. So this is a connection of Devorah to Geula, and this idea of 40 years of peace after Devorah's victory. Okay, so now the Rebbe is going to get into practical teaching. Zion, yeah. So, according to what we said above, we can learn a practical teaching and a harav and a sinas kayach. It's a teaching, meaning something to put into action, and a teaching that will give extra energy. Ba'avodasan shel nasheh b'nai Yisrael b'during hazeh. In the divine, in the service, in the lives of women and daughters, Jewish daughters in this generation. And again, we're as men learning this as well. This we can extend this to a teaching for men as well. But first, let's talk about how this is particular teaching for women, and then we can maybe say a few words about how this applies to what we're doing here at Sun Heights. So Yom HaYilula, so the Yom HaYilula, the day of the passing of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, right, was connected. We had said earlier in the Sikha that he, at particular, previous Lubavitcher Rebbe had emphasized the role of women in the redemption, and his passing was on the same day as the passing of his grandmother, and soon after that was the date of the passing of his mother, and the connection of all these dates in the very same time connected to this parsha, the Shabbos of Song. The Rebbe talks about this significance that since the passing of a righteous person elevates everything that the person is about, and so therefore the idea of these women and their legacy still living on through us, especially the women of later generations of this generation, and even to the point where there will be a tchias hamesim, of resurrection of the dead, that they would, because of the interest of the pasuk, which we're going to get into at some point, is a very important verse connected with music and this idea of resurrection. Hakitzav haranu sheichne afar, that the dead will arise and sing. What's the first thing that in the resurrection, those who were passed away will come back to life, and the first thing they will do will be sing. Okay, so but in particular, the Rebbe talks about that year. Go to page 307. That year was a very special year. Connected with Geula, the Rebbe had made particular announcements regarding Geula, and also connected it to Basi Lagani, which was the famous final teaching of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, which means "come into my garden," which alludes to the redemption in inviting Hashem back into this world, making this world a true Garden of Eden in the redemption, making it a dwelling place for Hashem in the lower worlds. So now here comes the practical teaching. So letter Ches on the last page 307. We'll say it inside. V'harama yuchedis v'ikris b'negei le'inyan hashira. So the particular teaching, the main teaching regarding song, K'mudgash b'shiras Miriam b'shiras Devorah, as is emphasized by the song of Miriam and the song of Devorah. K'shem shebe'yetzias Mitzrayim muftachos hayitzidkani shebedor. So just like in the times of the redemption from Egypt, that the righteous women of that generation were sure, they were positive, Mitzrayim. So therefore they we brought down from the Shalah that we by the women leaving Egypt, so too it is by the redemption from this that immediately the true and complete redemption will come. this feeling that any moment it can come and it will come. At this moment is the moment for it to come, that sure feeling. So how do we express that feeling? Va'ad shemaschilus takef, so to such a degree that they begin immediately, berega hagalus achronim, even in the final moments of galus, of the exile, va'ashir b'toifim mecholas, with song, with drums, and with dance. What are they celebrating with? They're celebrating the arrival of the true and complete redemption. They believe so much it's right now, they start to celebrate right now. This applies to all women, but the Rebbe is talking specifically to Jewish women. But again, this is a teaching for all of us. Because the Rebbe earlier in the Sikha related the entire Jewish people to the women, the wife of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the wife of Hashem. And the Simcha Yisera, the additional joy of the music with instruments, is something that obviously men can participate in as well. And here in Sound Heights, we've go to great extent with the blessing of the we have from the Lubavitcher Rebbe to expend, to great beautiful instruments, to get beautiful equipment, to make this a place for people to make music, men and women. And
as if the Geula was already.
As if it's already here, acting as if it's here, making music as if it's here. And even more particular, with together with the prayer, habakasha v'adrisha, the request and the seeking, ma'akodesh Baruch Hu, from Hashem, shiyavi asagul teichem yamamish, together with asking Hashem that He should bring it immediately, shimiteich regesh shel tsar ha'meriras, that yearning, asking Hashem, please bring the redemption, comes from pain. Miriam al Shem Hamrira, because Miriam is named after bitterness. Al richas agalas, on how long this bitter exile has been. Shabali yedei bitze batzaka mekerev v'lev amok. Ad masa, to such a degree that someone comes to express with a deep heart, to cry out. Ad masa, which means until when will this galus last? When will the geula come? That should be, this request should not just be a request from pain. Tati Hashem, end this suffering, end the galus, but it should be primarily permeated with joy, a palpable feeling of joy. And how do we express our joy? With song, with music, and with instruments, as the Rebbe clearly more than implies. With the great trust, the clear belief that Melech Mashiach is come, the kavarba, and has already come. And this is something Rebbe said over and over again in these times, which was a very wondrous thing. The Rebbe says Mashiach has come. We are living in Mashiach's times. Exactly how that plays out, we have to learn more about Mashiach in our lives. We open our eyes, but we have even if we don't see it, that we believe with true faith, and we act on it through song to express that belief, and thereby reveal it. And the additional thing, and this is the main thing, shirim kol b'nei Yisrael. Now he concludes the men, that immediately that the entire Jewish people should sing, ha'nashim v'nashim v'ataf, men, women, and children, as ashira ha'asiris l'asid lava, the 10th song of the future time. Right? This is a tradition that there's been, in the history, there's been 10, or there have been so far 9 primary songs, the way they're listed in Torah, prophetic songs that have been, and the 10th one will be the song of the complete redemption. So the word shir is masculine, and shira is feminine, but the song of the future will be in the masculine language. Again, the Rebbe is including men. But this is just talking about the idea of masculine versus feminine in the Hebrew language. That in general, music is referred to in a feminine way, because music is, as the Rebbe is talking about, in many ways more associated with women, and that all the songs are connected with women. But but there's also something else besides the female connection, why the word shira is most often, and all 9 songs before the redemption is in a feminine, grammatical feminine language. It's because every salvation we've ever had in history has been followed by another subjugation, meaning it hasn't been a complete redemption yet, because similar to a woman who has a cycle, who has a menstrual cycle of birth and then regeneration. But the final salvation, the future salvation, there will not be any more subjugation, will not be any more exile after it. That's why it's said in a male lashon, in a male language, because men not having a menstrual cycle are much more related to the idea of consistency. It's not necessarily men and women, it's talking about masculine and feminine. And we'll say, Shir Lashem Shir Chadash. We'll sing a new song to Hashem, and this new song, which is a song of redemption, is said in a masculine way. Masculine meaning never ending. It will not be a song that ends. It will not be a song that's followed by something other than this. It will be a song that will be a song forever, and the true and complete redemption.
It's Shir and not Shira.
Shir and not Shir, right? And so this idea that, so practically for us here at Sound Heights, and I encourage people to, tuning in wherever you are in the world, tuning into the videos, or coming if you're in Crown Heights to come by. Right now we have men's programs, and this is a very important thing, and we are developing women's programs, which is something very important, making a high priority. My wife, Sarah Meira, where she's in discussions with other women in terms of, obviously the women will do things in their own particular way. We have this great space with great recording environment, with great instruments that we've invested in that is for the sake of redemption. That's what we have instruments, because it's not just about singing. Singing is beautiful, but singing without the instruments is not the Simcha Yisera. And the more that a person feels the pain of exile, the more joy they're going to experience. The more that music can help them transform that to a much greater degree of joy. So I encourage people to, if you go to soundheightsrecords.com, you can also donate to help this effort, because here we're encouraging Torah learning and Torah practice, but also arts and music, and we see here how this is intimately connected. It not only expresses the feeling of redemption, but actually brings the redemption. So Hashem should bless us. Hashem should bless everyone with an experience of true and deep joy, and express it through music. It's the music that helps us. So make the musical choices. Take that bitterness, that suffering, and for those of us who still make excuses. Oh, I don't have time for music. When I make some money, or when I have a few minutes here and there. It's the thing that's gonna bring us salvation, transform our lives from bitterness to joy. So thank you.
Amen, amen, amen.
Now let's make some music. We'll continue to do another different live stream with the jam and Mitzvah. Thank you.